Hi, I'm Dr. Michael Pollock, or Mike from Psych. One of the courses I teach at Camosun is Psych 215 Biopsychology, where I train students to become mechanics of the mind. Psychology is the science of the mind and behavior, and bio indicates that it's taking a biological perspective trying to understand the mind and behavior. So taking neuroscience findings and applying to the questions of how do our thoughts and feelings and actions arise. And according to biopsychology, all of our thoughts and feelings arise from the mechanisms of the brain and the nervous system. And if those mechanisms go awry, then that can put you at risk of mental disorders and well-being issues. And so it's really essential to understand those brain mechanisms. The analogy I like to use is it being like a mechanic, that if you took your car in to be fixed, you would want the mechanic to understand the mechanisms, how the engine that drives the car works. And similarly, for understanding what the cause of the problems of mental disorders are, we really need to understand the underlying mechanisms inside the hood, inside our head, how our brain actually works. This course is a must for anyone who wants to have an understanding of the biological forces that control our behavior. In the course, in addition to going over the basic concepts, I also like to give the background context for how these concepts were discovered so that students can better relate to those concepts, but also so that they can come away from the course and have a better idea of how to best discover new findings. And so you can see various kind of common themes and how these concepts were discovered. One of the most common ones is the need to examine things in greater detail than it's ever been looked at before. One example that I'll just go into very briefly here is one of the greatest discoveries was discovery of REM sleep by the student Eugene Azarinsky back in the early 1950s. And what he did was he based his discovery of that on his principle that he called the golden manure principle, which is that if you take something that's commonplace, and the analogy, it's manure. In his case, it was actually sleep. Everyone thought that sleep was really boring, nothing to discover there. But if you examine it in more detail than anyone has asked before, then you're likely to strike gold, to make some kind of new discovery. And so he was guided by that principle. He examined sleep throughout the entire night, something that no one ever stayed up to do before, examining all sorts of aspects of its brain activity, its eye movement patterns, waking people up and saying what was going through their minds. And he discovered that there was this state of the brain occasionally that happened throughout the night where the brain was very active, associated with rapid eye movements. And if you woke the person up, it was associated with very vivid dreaming. And so really anyone could have discovered that state before, for thousands of years before, but it was only until he actually examined throughout the night the patterns, especially of the eye movements and associated with dreaming, he discovered this brand new state of the brain. The main topics, the first half of the course, we cover the fundamentals of neuroscience. So, for example, covering functional neuroanatomy, the places, names, and functions of different brain areas in the nervous system. Then the second half of that course, we then take that information and apply to different psychological topics. So for example, with perception, how it is that we perceive the world, how much we can perceive it, what are the brain mechanisms that determine that, or memory, the brain mechanisms that determine how much we remember, and ways that we can use that information to enhance our memory. And with action too, the brain mechanisms that determine our actions and when that goes awry, such as in the case of addictions where people lose voluntary control of their actions. I'm very lucky I get to teach a topic that I find personally fascinating. It deals with some of the really big questions that are out there in terms of how is it that consciousness rises from the brain, the nature of free will, does it exist or not? And I love to get in discussion with students, their unique perspectives they bring, but also too, I like to learn from the students by working with them on research assignments and helping to use biopsychology to try to solve their own personal problems that I get to learn a lot from them, working with them on those cases. The evaluation of grades is based on weekly quizzes, 2 to 3 exams, and a research assignment. So for the weekly quizzes, that's held online. Students can do the quizzes as many times as they want, and only their best score is marked as their grade. Each time they do the quiz, they're provided with feedback on which questions they got wrong, what the correct answers were, so they can learn from that before they try another attempt at the quiz. And those quizzes, by doing those, they also help prepare students for the exams, because the exams are based on the same concepts taken from my concept lecture notes. And so it doesn't forces them to have to keep up and not cram right before an exam. And they can also go in the exams feeling fairly confident then. If they can do very well on the quizzes, then they should be able to do the same when they come in to write the exams. Yeah, so I'd be very happy to have you join the class and allow me to be your guide through the strange world of the mind and its biological underpinnings.